Welcome, everybody. We are here at the University of Austin with Natalie Smolenski, the Executive Director of the Texas Bitcoin Foundation, anthropologist, and editor-in-chief of the Satoshi Papers. And we're here at the Satoshi Papers Symposium, one of the first events of its kind in the world, as far as I understand, not to be too dramatic, but a very special event in which we have academics across disciplines talking about Bitcoin. Super exciting to me as a former academic or someone who worked in academia. Please just give us maybe a little bit of a preview of what the event has been like so far.
Yeah, so we've gotten together several authors of the Satoshi Papers from across disciplines. We have a philosopher, political scientist, economist, and an anthropologist, each presenting their papers to an audience of University of Austin faculty and students, as well as others from the Bitcoin community, both here in Texas and around the world.
Very, very cool. So you've put together this, so it's cross-disciplinary, so you have academics from different fields coming together. I'm sure on some level you sort of had a vision for what you think you might, well, what you were expecting from each of these people to maybe contribute, but I'm sure it was pleasantly surprising to see what the contributors ended up giving you. As you know, you go through the process of taking in the abstracts and then they submit the pieces. What were some sort of maybe aha moments or some sort of major takeaways for you in putting this, in putting the Satoshi Papers together?
Well, I think the main one was that writing for an academic audience is very different from writing for a public policy audience or just the general public. We had to make sure that our work was rigorous, that it was critically peer-reviewed, that all the citations were in place and valid. So no Chat GPT here. This was all serious work, and it is meant to be read by people across the social sciences who may never have heard of Bitcoin or may actually be hostile to it or opposed to it.
Okay. As a little bit of a preview for people who are maybe avid Bitcoin book readers, fans of the Bitcoin Standard and the other classics that are out there, what can they expect from the Satoshi Papers?
Well, they can expect a rigorous investigation of the relationship between individual, state, and society, specifically through the lens of monetary institutions. So they can look for a history of central banking, a history of money, an examination of competing theories of money and a proposed synthetic theory of money, an introduction that sets the stakes about the moment of political refounding that we are experiencing now in the United States, and how the federalist and anti-federalist debate may be relevant to our moment today.
Yeah, that term, I really love it. You mentioned it earlier today too, political refounding. So we're at this moment. A lot of people have talked about this, the likes of Naval Ravikant, of like a second American Revolution that might be happening, and Bitcoin is a part of this, no question. What do you think needs, so we might move in a direction that we all feel maybe as Bitcoin enthusiasts is positive, but there are things where, you mentioned it today, things could go in a bunch of different directions at this point. For the audience, for people listening, for people who might read the book, for just Bitcoin enthusiasts in general, what do we really have to do to move in a positive direction to maintain, certain tenets that we really don't want to take for granted, like self-sovereignty, the right to transact peer-to-peer, as you've spoken about at length? What can we do as the average person to help maintain these rights?
Well, I think first and foremost we have to think, and that's very hard work. The concepts, solutions, and methods that are already on the table and that we're familiar with, especially in the world of party politics, those will not be sufficient to get us to a self-sovereign political future. And so the first thing we need to do, each of us as citizens, I mean, this was Thomas Jefferson's vision for democracy. It isn't just that people need to be educated. You can be very well educated and still not think. So taking the time to suspend pre-existing judgments, and instead of being in a hurry, really taking to root your analysis of a problem and the proposed solution. That's something we all have the obligation to do as stewards of a democratic republic.
What might you say to people who say, "Well, I'm tired. I work a lot. Some sort of, let's say, symptoms of the fiat economy, right? People having to work multiple jobs. They don't necessarily have that headspace. To people out there, a lot of people make this comment, this sort of commentary in the space. We do need to sort of think more critically about this, but it is difficult because some of this stuff is purposely sort of kept obscure, right? Some of the
Right.
issues with central banking, the traditional financial system. What would you say to people? Where is a good place to start when it comes to trying to get a better grasp on what's actually happening?
There's a difference between value-adding work and administrative overhead.
Okay.
And I would suggest that much of our apparatus of government at all levels today is overhead. So of course people don't have the time or the energy to engage in endless overhead.
Right.
But we each, as citizens of a republic, bear the responsibility to think and to steward and to raise our hands to serve when we are called to do so. If we don't do that, others will do it in our place. And we have in effect forfeited our right to govern ourselves.
Okay.
And so that is the question. The early founders of the United States, I mean, being a politician wasn't their first time job, or
Right.
their full-time job. They were farmers, they had businesses, they were otherwise employed. Governing was a specific activity that they were called to do for a specific period of time. That also reflected the much smaller role of the state in their era.
Right.
And so I think one of the major questions that we have to ask is, what have we lost in the professionalization of politics as a career, in government as a full-time job?
Yeah.
Does this, in fact, jive with being a democracy? And if not, what steps can we take to begin maybe pruning back some of the tasks that the state has arrogated to itself, that are not enumerated in the Constitution, that the people can take back for themselves?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that's been surprising to me as a political reporter is I've been speaking with a lot of people in government, both at the state level and the federal level. And I think there's more Bitcoiners in government than most people think. And now we have, strategic Bitcoin reserves, and we have Bitcoin sort of becoming a bit more ingrained in the U.S. government. Do you think, certain people, Bitcoin is the separation of money and state, so certain people are a bit critical of this. But do you think under this administration, we're sort of moving in a good direction, generally speaking?
The main question for any political administration, this one or future administrations, is to what extent is it able and willing to make trade-off decisions?
Okay.
Politics has been the art of trying to get everything, and you can't have everything. Certainly not on a long timeline. So we can't be an international military empire and have the dollar be the world's reserve currency and run a trade surplus.
Right.
Those things are mutually incompatible goals. We cannot have liberty and justice for all and a state that has visibility into everybody's financial transactions.
Right.
Those are mutually incompatible goals.
Yep.
And so what politicians do is they try to pretend that there is no trade-off. And it is up to the American people to stop accepting that, to begin to call out, no, we have to choose. And our values as a political community will guide us in what we choose to prioritize and what we just trade off.
Yep.
So these are the decisions that we have to make together as a people.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect note to leave it on. Natalie, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for arranging this. Thank you for getting the Satoshi Papers together, for acting as editor-in-chief. We sincerely appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.